What's going on, guys? My name is Tommy. Welcome back to the channel, and once again, welcome back to another episode of Wednesday Afternoon Worship. Today, as with my last two videos in this series, at the request of the Inn of Planar Crossroads, more specifically Mr. Adam Spain, we'll be talking about one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Specifically today, we're talking about the Horseman of Famine, Trelmarixian, who appears as a monster with stats in Bestiary 6 and has his lore expanded for the latest time in Book of the Damned. If you guys have a request for this series or any of my other series, in the comments below, be sure to hit me up, let me know, and we'll get right on them. Speaking of get right on it, you guys have about 24 hours to enter this channel's Ollie Art character portrait giveaway. Again, if you need a shiny new Roll20 token, if there's a character near and dear to your heart you'd love to see immortalized, or if you want to just show off to your friends, hey, look what that cool guy with a YouTube channel got me in exchange for telling him all about my super cool character, follow the link right here to enter the giveaway. As always, this channel is supported directly by patronage, and today, this episode of Wednesday Afternoon Worship was brought to you by the man who requested it, Mr. Adam Spain. Adam, as always, thank you for your friendship. Thank you for having me dig deeper into the realms of the Four Horsemen, because I didn't really get to see their character sheets because I was a player in a campaign going around them, and thus I didn't really know a whole lot about them or what they could do. It's been a super fun experience, but we're not quite done yet, so let's get to it. Again, to quote the Book of Revelations, when he broke the third seal, I heard the third living creature saying, "Come." I looked, and behold a black horse, and he who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard something like a voice in the center of four living creatures, saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, but do not damage the oil and the wine." The third horseman, the Horseman of Famine, was described as carrying a pair of balances or weighing scales, indicating the way that bread would have been weighed during a famine. Other authors interpret this as him being the Lord of Law-giving, holding the scales of justice, and in the passage it's read that the indicated price of grain is about 10 times as normal. With an entire day's wages, a Latin denarius, or probably about 1 gold piece, buying enough wheat for only 1 person, or enough of the less nutritious barley for 3, so that workers would struggle to feed their families. Trelmarixian is the youngest and most ambitious of the four horsemen. He obsesses over the systematic exploration of soul consumption, and in his words, "We are born of souls and destined to destroy mortality, but we are destined for even greater things thereafter." He is often depicted as a thin, starving man with 3 jackal heads, crystalline teeth, and black, oddly fluid or membranous flesh. In fact, Trelmarixian has no true form. The Horseman of Famine's physical body exists as a protoplasmic slurry of bile, blood, and mucus. Think like a corpse that has decayed and been reduced to a liquefied pulpy muck. The lysogenic prince is nothing if not ambitious. While he is young compared to the other horsemen, young is a relative term, and the Horseman of Famine has held his position for aeons. Due to the nature of his mortal death, his soul was ensnared by the former Horseman of Famine, Lutheria the Parasite Queen, but rather than devouring it, she warped it into a form that was to her liking. Her interest was rewarded, and he worked for millennia beneath her, as time passed, acting less as a servitor and more as a consort and an apprentice, supplementing her research with his own. So long had Lutheria reigned, however, that she no longer truly believed that she might one day be deposed, and thus she allowed her servant more freedom than any of the other horsemen would ever consider doing. When Trelmarixian eventually overthrowed and consumed his mistress, becoming the new Horseman of Famine, few in Abaddon were surprised. Trelmarixian concerns himself with both dominion of starvation and the broader concept of wasting, both physically and metaphysically speaking. Whereas his predecessor, the Parasite Queen, embodied the idea of wasting through violent parasitism, Trelmarixian instead embodies the idea of wasting from cancers and other forms of self-consumption. Physical withering as a hijacked immune system turns the body against itself in a downward spiral of corporeal decay. Those who worship Trelmarixian knows he grants access to the domain madness, Like the viral cancers he represents, the Horseman of Famine also behaves like his chosen concept in a concrete matter. Over the centuries, he has infected his servitor caste of daemons, including several of his more powerful vassals among the withered court, with aspects of his essence that lurk within them like viruses. Precisely how much influence or control he can exert this way is known only to Trelmarixian himself, but even if this infection opens only a tiny window of awareness to each servitor, he would be bombarded with sensory information on a massive scale, enough to make nearly any single consciousness insane. As a result, Trelmarixian's fragmented mind brims with madness and a multitude of voices, chief among them the voice of his lover, mentor, and predecessor. He still adores her in his own way, though consumption was his only means of expressing these mortal feelings. She in turn still speaks to him, advising him as she sees fit, or mocking his shortcomings like an aggressive, self-aware conscience. By force of will, or, will save, Trelmarixian can silence these voices, but one of them haunts him no matter what he does. Most of the daemons retain only fragmented recollections of their mortal existences. Trelmarixian, on the other hand, remembers everything, save for the last few minutes of his life. After snuffing out every single life on his world in an unparalleled work of sorcery, but condemning himself to starvation in the process, at the end of his mortal existence, he recalls a voice talking to him, asking him questions, and mocking his success as paltry compared to what awaited him after death. Despite killing everyone, he knew someone was there, but he cannot remember the Watcher's face or last words before his own death. As a mortal, Trelmarixian was born a tiefling of mixed and unknown mortal heritage, but his blood carries a distinctly demonic taint. His memories haunt him, as does the question of whose blood he inherited, and thus who may still have some unfulfilled claim on him. What troubles him most is the notion that he was born to be the vector for the return of his own progenitor, a virus within another, as it were, incubating and waiting for the day to come to express itself and snuff out Trelmarixian as he did his own predecessor. The Horseman of Famine, like all the other horsemen, is neutral evil. He grants access to the domains Earth, Evil, Madness, and Weather, with subdomains Decay, Daemon, Insanity, and Seasons. His favorite weapon is the spiked gauntlet, and his unholy symbol, a jackal's skull clenching an eclipse in its jaws. His temples include circles at the hearts of blighted fields, empty granaries, forests made barren by volcanic activity, you get the idea, and his worshippers include evil druids, those who suffer from famine, and hungry ghosts. Trelmarixian's obedience requires us to abstain from eating or drinking until you experience the bitter pangs of hunger. Meditate in this state for just under an hour, and then gorge yourself upon any available substance regardless of its suitability as food. In return, you gain a +4 profane bonus on saving throws against effects that cause exhaustion, fatigue, nausea, or sickness. That can be pretty strong depending on the character you're trying to play. That +4 bonus to a barbarian who gets hit with something like a ray of exhaustion could make or break you. Trelmarixian's evangelist boons give us access to memory lapse thrice a day, false life twice a day, or vampiric touch once a day. At 16th level, you can cast Insanity once per day as a spell-like ability, and at 20th level, you can make a touch attack to infect another creature with a fragment of your soul. The target can resist this attack with a successful will save, DC 10 plus half your hit dice plus your charisma. Otherwise, while you and the target are on the same plane, as a free action, you can observe what your target perceives with its senses. Once per day, as a standard action, you can directly control the target's actions for 1 round, plus a number of additional rounds equal to your charisma bonus. The affected creature retains no memory of your controlling influence or its actions while controlled. This is a curse effect. You can only have 1 target affected by the kiss of the lysogenic prince at a time, and if you target another creature, the first is no longer affected. So once a day for at 20th level, I'm gonna say like maybe 9 or 10 rounds on the right sorcerer, you can control somebody and they won't remember it. If nothing else, it can help that paladin fall from grace, but I digress. The exalted boons give us access to Ray of Enfeeblement thrice a day, Feast of Ashes twice a day, or Cup of Dust once a day. At 16th level, once a day, as a standard action, you can consume any non-living substance without ill effect. The size of the object consumed can be no larger than a creature of your own size category, but regardless of the size, consuming the object takes only 1 round. A body consumed in this way can only be restored to life via miracle True Resurrection, or Wish, and any object you consume can attempt a Fortitude save, otherwise it is destroyed. At 20th level, once a day, you can invoke Trelmarixian's Unending Hunger to cause a number of victims to consume themselves from the inside out, aka casting Implosion once a day as a spell-like ability. So if nothing else, you can eat a person in 6 seconds, so that's a thing. Anyway, Sentinel boons give us access to Mount thrice a day, War Train Mount twice a day, or Phantom Steed once a day, just like the other Horsemen. At 16th level, as a swift action, you can radiate an Aura of Hunger to a radius of 20 feet. Once you activate this ability, you can maintain it each round as a free action. You can use this ability for a number of rounds per day equal to your hit dice. They do not need to be consecutive, but they must be used in 1-round increments. Each round a creature begins its turn within this aura, it must succeed at a fort save, 10 plus half your hit dice plus your charisma modifier again, or take 1d6 points of non-lethal damage and become fatigued from extreme hunger. Creatures that don't need to eat are immune to this effect, and so are you. However, you still feel hunger pangs. In addition, you also no longer take damage, nor are otherwise inconvenienced by the effects of starvation. At 20th level, once per day, you can teleport yourself into the flesh of any living creature that you can see as per Greater Teleport, erupting out of its body in a shower of blood, bone, and viscera, arriving in an adjacent square and dealing 5d6 points to all creatures within 10 feet. The target itself takes 20d6 points of damage. The target and creatures in the area can attempt fort saves, DC 10 plus half your hit dice plus your con, to reduce the damage by half, but any creature that fails this saving throw is nauseated for 1d4 rounds. Just have to say on that one, 20d6 doesn't necessarily mean you kill someone. That's an average of about 70 damage, so if you use it on like a wizard who dumped his con, yeah, okay, he's probably going to have a bad time, but the barbarian's just going to see a giant hole in his chest from where you've exploded, and he's going to walk it off. I have to say, for 20th level, that probably should have been a death effect, especially for how sweet the flavor text on that is. All in all, these boons aren't bad. They're certainly very flavorful, and you would know because some of them involve you, eating people. But they seem to be definitely specifically for the GM, because it's pointless to have the GM have to use Wish or Miracle to resurrect somebody, because the GM has access to that because, he's the GM. The same goes for the Evangelist cap that lets you control people, but hey, if you think you can pull this off in a game, if you're playing something a little more intrigue-oriented, yeah, sure, by all means, go for it. Like we said before, Trelmarixian does appear along with his 3 other friends in the 4 Horsemen, friends being probably a subjective term there, in Bestiary 6, and Trelmarixian hits the scales at CR 27. Like we said before, he did consume the previous Horseman of Famine, and portions of that previous Horseman's essence still exist within his belly, being slowly digested like a sweet spiritual lozenge. This previous Horseman was herself a parasitic entity, and once per hour, as an immediate action, Trelmarixian can lower his resistance to his predecessor's rage to allow her to infuse him with fury from within. When Trelmarixian does so, he gains the effects of every cleric's favorite spell if they're going offense, Righteous Might, and his regeneration increases to 30 for 4 rounds. When this effect ends, Trelmarixian is staggered for 1d4 plus 1 rounds if he fails a DC 35 fort save. We don't normally talk about this, but for the record, Trelmarixian's fort save is plus 29, so he's probably passing, but you never know. Trelmarixian's bite attacks, and of course he has 3 of them, always apply strength and a half damage no matter what, no secondary attacks. If he uses a manufactured weapon, he's good. Trelmarixian's Swallow Whole ability is a supernatural ability that can affect huge or smaller creatures, despite the fact that Trelmarixian is only size category medium. His stomach functions similarly to an extra-dimensional space and can hold any number of creatures. If Trelmarixian swallows an object that contains an extra-dimensional space, like a bag of holding or a portable hole, that object cannot be opened while it's within Trelmarixian's belly. But it does not otherwise, cause a rip in the universe. Trelmarixian can, as a standard action, every 1d4 rounds, call upon the tattered fragments of the innumerable souls he has consumed to unleash a mind-shattering wail. This affects all creatures within a 60-foot spread. Those affected take 1d10 points of wisdom drain and are stunned for a round. Any creature that succeeds at a DC 36 will save instead takes only a d4 of wisdom damage, not drain, and is staggered for a round. This is a sonic mind-affecting effect, and the save DC is charisma-based. I have to say, Trelmarixian doesn't have a whole lot going for him in terms of special abilities. He does have plenty of fun spell-like abilities that he can cast, but compared to all of the other horsemen we've talked about so far, he kind of seems to fall short a little bit. Though I do suppose in hindsight that Trelmarixian is only a CR 27 and thus the weakest of the 4 horsemen, so maybe this guy is more akin to like, we're going to throw him in here, we're going to debuff you a little bit, we're going to maybe swallow somebody whole, we're going to show you what these guys can do before running them up in order towards the other ones that can do more damage, the other ones that have more fun and scary effects. Or, I don't know, maybe I'm just being picky. What do you guys think about Trelmarixian? Have you ever used him? Have you ever fought him? Or have you ever built a character that might go on to venerate Trelmarixian? If so, throw it in the comments. We'll keep the conversation going. Be sure to like and subscribe, as always, for more videos. The next episode of Wednesday Afternoon Worship, which concludes the 4 Horsemen, where we talk about the Horseman of Death, Charon, drops next Wednesday.